Welcome to Girl Dad, the podcast, the essential podcast for fathers navigating the complex but rewarding journey of raising daughters. I'm your host, Madeline Anderson, and I'm thrilled to bring you honest conversations with dads and daughters, sharing heartfelt stories, actionable advice, and real daughter perspectives that will help you be the best girl dad you can be. Hello and welcome back to Girl Dad, the podcast. I'm your host, Madeline Anderson, and today we have an amazing episode with Kang from Wayfinder Counseling in South Bay, LA. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he primarily works with teens and young adults. We have an amazing conversation today. It is raw, it is real. We talk a lot about the different ways that fathers can help set their daughters up for success, the kinds of narratives that they can help shape for their daughters. And we talk a lot about what is happening in today's world with depression and anxiety and some solutions on how to prevent it. With that, Kang, welcome to Girl Dad, the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk about being a girl dad.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on. I think this is going to be an extremely valuable conversation for the audience because you are a girl dad, as you mentioned, but you are also a therapist and you have a lot of really great perspectives and stories from your experience in your work and your personal life. So I think that this is going to be an amazing conversation, and I would love to just kick it off by you introducing yourself, maybe telling us about what you do, why you do it, and a little bit about the path that got you to where you are today.
Okay, sure. My name is Ken. I am a mental health therapist here in the South Bay. My practice, private practice, is called Wayfinder Counseling. And I have an office in Hermosa and Palos Verdes. So I mostly focus on teens, young adults, children with various issues. What else can I tell you just as a way of background? So this is a second career for me. I used to work on Wall Street. I was a New York guy for the first 15 years of my professional life. Moved out here and have a family now. Got remarried, and now we have two kids, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So both girls. So it's my entire life now.
I love it. So what inspired you to transition from your 15-year career on Wall Street to now becoming a therapist?
I guess since it's a podcast, I can give you the long version.
Yep.
The reality is, Wall Street was exciting. I did really well, made pretty good money, had some success. But I was really unhappy. I got into a lot of unhealthy habits. I have a very addictive personality, so I kind of got sucked into a lot of things that come along with that. And, it was kind of when my career was going really well, that's sort of when I ran into a lot of problems, and I got into a divorce with my first wife. And I kind of hit rock bottom. I was sort of, hooked on a lot of different, prescribed and illegal medications, just kind of spiraling and having a hard time just adjusting to adult life. And this was probably my early 30s. And so there was a big process for me to try to kind of re-pick up the parts of my life. So I started going to therapy. Actually was a big part of my kind of change. But my decision to get into actually the practice of therapy, I moved out to LA. Yeah, I was like, I was so kind of hooked into the system of Wall Street, and I couldn't find a way out of it. I'm sort of the wake up with uppers and knock myself out with downers at the end of the night. And I was like, you had a psychiatrist there that was, kind of enabling it, I guess. But I realized I needed to do something. I had to change my environment. So I moved out to LA. My brother had a kid, and it was just an excuse for me to get out of there. And then I moved out here without a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I actually went on a ayahuasca trip to Peru. It was just sort of, I just feel like I was almost summoned there by the jungle. And I had a week-long kind of experience there. And this is when I was in a better place. I had stabilized, and I was thinking about, starting to kind of pick up the pieces, but I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life next. So I, through a lot of my journeys there, it was sort of working on myself, but there was an interesting so the way it works is like you take a little tiny little boat and you go out, 20 miles into the jungle, like down the Amazon, and then there's this little village that they create for it was mostly for Westerners, but sort of with like an authentic Peruvian shaman. And so there's 5 trips throughout a 7-day period, and you kind of again work on your own things. But my roommate was this kid. He was maybe 17 or 18 at the time, and he was really struggling. Had a really tough life. Even while I was kind of going on my own journey, one of the things that I was doing the whole time was kind of being a person for him. Like every night we would get into these deep conversations. Like the first night I got there first, I had the big bed and he had this little bed. But immediately I was like, no, you take the big bed. And I felt like part of my purpose to be here is to be someone for this kid.
Hmm.
And so it just started to feel more and more like, wow, this just feels really natural. Wall Street, the skill set is completely different. It's self-serving. It's just about calculating what makes the most sense. Well, how can I make the most money? But here it was like this whole other side of me was unlocked. Um,
Hmm.
and then so throughout that journey, I think it became clear that this was a way that would give my life kind of purpose. So again, I worked on a bunch of things, came back, and then I was like, oh, maybe I should take it a little more seriously. Went back to grad school, and now I'm a therapist.
Wow. That is extremely inspiring. And I think that there's a lot of there's a lot of dads out there who maybe aren't in Wall Street going through the same things as you, but maybe feeling unhappy with their current position. And I think it's so great to hear from other people who have gone through the process of changing something that they're unhappy about and coming on the other side and being able to speak to the amount of fulfillment that they now feel. I also actually was in finance after college. I went to UCLA, did business economics, got a job in finance and thought I really liked it, but I was, experiencing something similar, but a mild version of what you were describing. Even to like drinking energy drinks, which I would never even think about drinking now. That's just like so not what I
Uh-huh,
what I
uh-huh,
like. But and and just the sense of like a calling for something greater
uh-huh, uh-huh.
and then also the pressure and the stress of that job. So I actually got shingles when I was 22 because I was
Mm,
so stressed out.
mhm,
Yeah, and I think that just kind of spoke to it was like a real alarm clock, right? Like, "Hey, this is not right for you." And so I started writing Girl Dad on the side, and that's kind of what took me to where I am today. So
mm,
just a side note, I feel,
that's so cool.
yeah, I feel like that there's a lot of alignment there on our paths, but also like I said, I think there's a lot of dads out there who work because they have to, and I think when you're making a lot of money, I'm sure it's hard to leave a job because, there's that financial aspect of comfortability and providing for the family and all these kinds of things, and there's a lot of pressure for men to do so. But there are other options out there, and I want this story to be inspiring to the men out there who maybe are feeling stuck or feeling, um, stressed out about their current position and feel this calling to do something else or
Mhm,
to
mhm.
mix it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I love how you put that there, that the people that have a feel like they have a calling for something else, because I also the reality is I don't wanna make it seem like I'm just, shitting on Wall Street or people that are making money. Like, it's
right.
definitely if and for me, I think it was just I couldn't handle it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, um, I had to you had a shingles, I had an ulcer when I was 24, and
Yeah.
that's, I think, when Red Bull just started exploding, so it was just like every morning get one of those big boys,
Yeah.
Starbucks.
No, exactly. And I think, it's so different for everyone too. Like some people, what they need is a side hobby or an outlet, like a creative outlet, or they need to go outside more, go on walks and or play sports or go to the gym. Like it's not necessarily uproot your life and your career to find that happiness, but I think, that's a very inspiring story and it's just a good reminder that like we have this one life to explore and to live and I think that sometimes you feel this pressure like I have to do this or I have to stay on this path. Realistically, we have so many different opportunities and if there is an interest or a calling or something that you want to do to change up your life, I think it's important to listen to that side of you and be curious about what is maybe not being fulfilled and how you can fulfill it. And but this is, obviously a podcast for fathers with daughters, and I would love to speak more too about just your role as a therapist. And you said you specialize in working with teens and young adults, but would love to hear more about some of the common issues that you see and how you help them. And especially, because a lot of dads who listen to this podcast have teens and young adults. And so hearing from you on what they may be going through and how to help them is really, really key. So
Sure,
yeah, I would
sure.
love to hear more about that.
Sure. It's a big question. But I guess starting with sort of the main issues that I'm seeing, and I know this will resonate, just the the research and stats will kind of back it up. But it's depression and anxiety. No surprise there. But underneath of that, that being kind of the most common issue is really more I would describe as um, negative self-talk and an inability to handle distressing feelings. And that's sort of the operative, like depression, anxiety, or what it looks like. But and those are maybe the feelings or whatever. But it's more this again inability to handle these negative feelings or distress, and then negative self-talk. I work with more boys for sure, but certainly I work with plenty of girls in my practice. But yeah, I guess I don't know where you want to begin with kind of exploring that, but maybe I can talk about my approach.
Yeah, sure.
So when kids come in, a lot of times parents are like, well, I've read this thing and I heard this approach really is the answer. And or parents will come in and say like, I try, I listened to this podcast and I tried this and it's not working. And the reality is working with kids is different than adults in that it's a very non-linear process, and kids are so unique, and it's not the traditional talk therapy model typically. Um, and so depending on the age of the kid, it's, it can involve games. It can involve, ultimately I love to get to the talking, but, the most important thing I think is really developing trust and gaining the client's trust. Having this be a safe space where they are able to just be themselves. So this will be oftentimes the first time, well, they'll be around an adult that really gets to see them, really understand them and know how their minds work, and knows and they already know that I know all the bad things that they're doing at home because their parents have told me.
Hmm.
But they will also feel that none of that matters to me. And so there's kind of like a place for them to reset how they view themselves. And then there's a ton of different things that we do along the way. But I would say that is the kind of the basis of the approach, is to build this relationship and then start to develop sort of, through that, help them develop awareness and being able to explore their sort of, how their mind works in ways that they're
Hmm.
um, kind of sabotaging themselves.
Okay. No, I love that. And you spoke to the negative self talk and the inability to handle emotions. Do you see any common themes as to why these things tend to occur? Is there like a shift in maybe today's modern society versus what the dads of, these children may have experienced when they were kids?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'm not sure. Are you familiar with Jonathan Haidt?
I'm
He's
not,
a
no.
he's a social psychologist who does a ton of great work. But he just wrote this book called Anxious Generation,
Oh,
and
yes.
it's a brilliant book. So it talks about basically the effect of cell phones and how they've impacted kids. But it's, very data driven, and kind of shows a spike in anxiety and depression since 2013. I think depression went from like 13% of teens to like 30%, and I'm guessing that's even underestimating it. And anxiety has gone through a similar spike. So, you hear these ideas like, "Oh, keep phones out of kids' hands," but they're kind of like generic comments. But he really kind of explores the idea that, and so it's kind of different for guys and girls. For boys, it's more video games, but since this is a Girl Dad podcast, we'll focus on girls. And so it's focused on sort of social media and, how that's really changed the way that, girls that are going through puberty and developing, right? Like when their minds are the most malleable and affected, they are just getting bombarded with really sort of negative fear-based messaging. So social media, he did this really cool research experiment when he signed up as a 13-year-old girl on Instagram. And I'm not sure if you saw this, but it blew my mind. And through this account as a 13-year-old girl, he would only like kittens and Taylor Swift and like the most innocent stuff. But within a week, the reels that were getting fed to this 13-year-old girl that likes kittens and Taylor Swift were, a quarter of them were about anorexia recovery and
Mm.
depression and anxiety and you know, obviously these are important things to talk about, but it's, a 13-year-old girl that has no concept of this is seeing uh,
Mhm.
an 80-pound girl talk about how she hates the way that she looks. And, like, how does an innocent 13-year-old mind consolidate this information? Um,
Mhm.
and so, it's this, and the algorithm is based on fear and anxiety. And so it's trying to make this girl feel, oh my God, what the hell am I supposed to do? I need more information. So it starts that pattern at an early age. And The other thing, of course, with social media and girls specifically is, girls are more, generally speaking, girls are more communicative and collaborative, and they're, kind of like to just, talk with friends and frame of reference with communicating with friends. And so again, with social media, it's replaced a lot of that in-person talk with sort of, communicating through, digital channels. And so, they lose the ability to, a lot of young girls are losing the ability to be in a social situation. And even like we think we're trying to protect our girls from the mean girl at school, but really the scary thing is the cyberbullying is that times 50. All right. Um, and so it's like, we're making our kids not able to face the realities, the difficulties of the real world, because we're trying to protect them in the real world.
Mhm.
But instead we're kind of shoveling. Oh, they're at least they're at home, so they're safe. But in fact, like all the child predators are online, the cyberbullying, the negative self-referencing is just getting blasted into their brains. So we think we're keeping them safe, but we're actually, setting them up for failure. Um, but I think for dads, the question is, okay, so what do you do about it? Right? Then my girl, is she going to be the only one without a phone? That doesn't really work either. It's a really tricky thing. So I think one of the things that a couple of my friends in New York are doing is, I think having a real conversation, getting to know first of all your friends, your kids, friends, parents, and I think that takes some work and intentionality. And guys in general, after a certain age, stop making new friends. So I think that's something we need to work on. But making an effort to get to know them, and having a a group approach, like, okay, none of us are going to give our kids,
Mm.
smartphones until they're 16, or as long as you can possibly get it. Firm rule on no social media as long as you can, or maybe social media till you're 18. I don't know, as long as you can push it off. But again, it's pushing against culture, and if everyone's on it, that's what makes it so hard. But I think in terms of why there is a spike, I think it's pretty clear that that's the primary driver.
Hmm. I've never heard of the community of parents kind of coming together to help one another, and I love that idea
Yeah,
because yeah, I think that that's what I've heard. I play tennis with this group of moms, and so I always get insight into, like, the mom crew, and I learn so much because I'm, at the age that we're thinking about having children and, probably in the next 2 years, and so I'm gathering as much information as I can. And one of the things that they always say is like, it's so hard because everyone else has phones. They like, even at a super young age in elementary school, they have iPhones and they have the iPads and everything. And so if you don't give your child this, then they have this idea that, they're not loved like their other friends' parents, or, they make up these stories. And so they're concerned about that. So then they might just, kind of give in. But being able to cultivate this community where you know, okay, if your daughter is over at this friend's house, you're aligned with that parent and you know they're playing outside or they're hanging out and they're building a relationship genuinely, not just sitting together on the phone or, and so you're finding like-minded parents. So that's really, really interesting. I've never heard that, but I'm definitely going to be
Yeah.
implementing that in my life, and I'm sure a lot of dads will take that one to heart too.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, man, and yeah, again, I think you brought up an interesting point where a lot of the moms are saying like, "B I don't want my kid to think that I don't love them." But the reality is it's not the opposite. Of course, parents love their kids, and they don't want their kid to feel ostracized.
Mhm.
But we're also, like, drawing a firm boundary because we think that if we draw a firm boundary, all right, that we want our kids just to be like, "Oh, thank you for teaching me this life lesson. You're right. This is better for me." And that's what parents kind of expect to happen or want to happen. They don't expect it, but they want it to happen, and that's kind of but the reality is the kid is never going to say it. They'll never say, "Oh, I think you're right?" Like, they are going to fight you, they're gonna and but the whole point of that is then you're also that's another thing that I think, society and this one I definitely poached from Dr. Becky. I'm not sure if you've heard of her, but she said,
Mhm.
like, the millennial, um, parent whisperer, but, um, her her idea that we don't allow our kids to fail enough, to struggle enough, and so, like, drawing these firm boundaries makes, and, like, being able to make our kids feel distress and for us to be able to manage and handle that feeling of them, like, you don't love me, like, you're like everyone else found me, and I'm the only loser that it doesn't have one. I'm never gonna have any friends. And then we're sitting there feeling, oh, like I'm so guilty, like I should just give it to them. Um,
Mhm.
but the reality is, this is the feeling that they're gonna have so many times in life. Like, oh, I'm left out. Like I'm disadvantaged. This is a bad feeling. And if we're training them that, okay, well, as soon as you feel bad, here's the answer. Like you get what you want, right? Here's the dopamine hit you get. Okay, I've given. Um, Life is gonna be full of these feelings of like I'm not getting what I want. The more important lesson by far is to be able to teach them, yeah, I can sit in that feeling. I can feel frustrated and mad at dad or mad at mom and I hate my parents, but but this is the reality that I have to live in. Right. So you
Mhm.
taught them how to handle distress while also kind of, shielding them from the real dangers there.
I think that's so important, and I love that they're kind of flexing and building that muscle of uncomfortable feelings, and they're becoming more resilient in the process because it's obviously they didn't get what they wanted, right? And then if you give them what they want to make them happy in the moment, you're not allowing them to teach themselves how to cope with these different feelings.
Mhm.
So, yeah, to the point of allowing your children to fail more, this is a really good exercise for helping them work through process feelings and also to show that you do love them because I think there's like a balance, right? And I'm sure you could speak to this very well as a psychologist or a therapist, but um when it comes to parenting, like having boundaries shows love because if you didn't have boundaries and you didn't care about them or didn't love them, you would let them do anything that they want. And by kind of drawing a line somewhere very fair, you allow them to feel safe and loved and protected because it's like, look, you are cared about. And if you stay true to those boundaries,
Mhm.
then it kind of asserts that first of all, you're you're looking out for them and they can't do whatever they want, but also um it teaches them how to cope with those situations and understand how to work through different kinds of emotions that like you said will come up throughout their life. I always think of it like a bowling alley. It's like playing with bumpers, you're going to hit more strikes and then playing without, you might end up in the gutter, but then if you don't play at all,
Mhm.
then you definitely get no pins, right? So, anyways, it's,
Yeah.
I think it's important for parents to have boundaries, but, to be fair about them as well.
Yeah, it is a fine line, right? I'll say like this for guys too, in particular, since as the Girl Dad podcast again, I'm speaking to myself, um, and I think this applies to a lot of dads, is that we tend to play like, oh, the chill, oh, I'm the chill dad, I'm the chill guy in the relationship, Um, and so we kind of draw boundaries, but we pretend, or we try to be like, oh, we're but generally a little more lax. And then until the point where we feel disrespected, and then we get mad, and then we get frustrated, and then we snap and we yell, and like somehow believing that we're doing a good job, right? But the reality is, it's like, it's important to draw the boundary earlier, stay consistent, and to do it with kindness. So
Mm,
again, I think men oftentimes confuse drawing boundaries as like just yelling really loud at the moment when I can't handle it anymore. Oh, I just drew a boundary
yeah,
versus this thing that you're not allowed to do. Here's a reasonable consequence that happens because you did this. Um, and staying firm on that. So rather than being like, well, if you don't put your shoes on, we're never going to go to your friend's house again. Right. Like, of course, and then like you cave on that the very next day,
yeah,
coming up with a consequence that like makes sense. Like if you don't put your shoes on, we're actually going to be late and we're going to have less time. And then, so like, I think it's important to draw these boundaries with reasonable consequences that make sense, and staying consistent with them.
agreed. I think that makes a lot of sense, and, it's an important reminder because I think these kinds of actions and what parents say take intention and take kind of like some pre-thought because I think a lot of the outbursts come in the moment, in the heat of the moment, right? And if, like you said, until you feel disrespected, then you start to, yell or lash out. And if you really take some time and intention, and maybe you sit down with your partner and you decide, like, here's how we're going to handle and navigate these situations, and kind of like draw that line together and establish fair, quote unquote, consequences if boundaries are crossed, then I think everyone will have more success in the relationship. So thank you for sharing that. So obviously on this podcast, I speak with a lot of fathers and I speak with a lot of daughters and experts about the father-daughter relationship. And I see and I think it's evident in a lot of ways how much a healthy father-daughter relationship impacts the daughter and the rest of her life. But I would love to hear from you from a therapist perspective on this, on how does a healthy father-daughter relationship contribute to a young woman's emotional and psychological well-being?
Sure, sure. I think the idea there's a concept called attachment theory. Essentially, it's kids learn about future relationships and the nature of them through their relationship with early caregivers. That used to be just moms. So, like, if the old research was like really through your relationship with your mom, but fortunately, the world's changed, and roles have shifted, and so a dad can be a primary caregiver now. So but attachment theory again, so how they view the world and how they view how relationships should go depend on heavily on they're modeled through these early relationships. So there's been a lot of research that shows that a stable, consistent relationship with a father for daughters predicts things like resilience, independence, and confidence. Um, and again, the idea there is like because there is a safe, stable, secure base. So a secure attachment means a kid feels that they know that there is this great, stable thing that I can come back to that will never waver and that will always be there for me. That gives them the confidence to go out. If you think on the playground, that gives that kid the confidence to go out and play and not look back until they're ready to come back. Or if they fall, then they can get up and come back, and they know that that thing is there to protect them. So that's sort of having this stable, consistent presence in your daughter's life. Um, and again, the research showing things like resilience and like confidence. If you think about those outcomes, those are the complete antidotes to the things I was describing that I'm seeing in my practice: the negative self-talk, um, um, the inability to handle distressing emotions. So, I also like to think about it like, do you watch oh, you don't have kids yet, so Bluey, there's a episode of Bluey that your parents will, a lot of parents will have seen. That's the like, I can watch it at any given moment, and it'll make me cry, but there's a scene when the kid is having this dream. It's like this show about these little dogs that are cartoons um, that have these relationships, but, um where the kid is kind of floating through space in his dream, and then the kid is lost and scared, and then is like kind of struggling, spinning, and then all of a sudden this giant sun shows up out of nowhere, and it's through this voice that's kind of muted in the background. It's the mom saying like, no matter like I don't know exactly words, but like wherever you are, just know that I'm always here. And then
Oh.
the little girl sees it, and then she's like, I'm okay now, mom, and then goes back and kind of explores, does whatever she was doing.
Oh.
Um, but it's a really the sweet moment, and I think that's how, I would like to try to picture the feeling that I want my kids to feel is that we are just these giant, enveloping, loving presence that's always going to be there. Um, and so, yeah, I think that's what a secure bond and dads can be that same thing, this secure bond that they will always feel like no matter what, no matter where I am in the world, even when I'm 35 and I'm struggling, I do know that I have someone that has my back, and that actually gives them the confidence. Not to go there and fix them or fix all their
Mhm.
problems for them, but just to be that steady presence.
Absolutely. I had on one of my friends who has an amazing relationship with her dad on the podcast recently. And one thing that we talked about is just knowing that our dad has our back and just the power of that feeling. It's unexplainable. It provides exactly what you said, that comfort, that confidence,
Hmm,
and allows us to go about our lives just with so much more of a sense of peace and security because no matter what, like, they're there, you know?
hmm,
And even if they're there just means, like, they're there to give us a hug and to tell us it's okay,
hmm,
just knowing that that
hmm,
is a reality is amazing. It's a great feeling.
uh-huh.
Um, so I love that. I'll have to watch that episode at some
Yeah,
point, but,
I think
um
it's something about the dream or something.
okay.
Okay, something like that, but
Yeah. No, that's
just
so cute.
ask some of your mom friends. Uh,
Yes, I'm sure they
and
all have seen that.
okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
oh, one other thing
yeah.
on that topic though is, the other thing in terms of the father-daughter relationship that I think that's important for guys to think about is that you oftentimes become part of their inner voice. And so, you know, how you communicate and what you communicate to them becomes part of how they talk to themselves. So I think the other thing to watch out for is if you have a tendency to be very um, corrective or harsh, just to kind of watch how often you're correcting or how quickly you're correcting your kid because that'll be their that can develop into a harsh inner voice. Also, you know, on the flip side of that is like complimenting. I think a lot of times parents will be or dads will be, almost too complimentary. Um, and to the point where the kid will feel like they constantly need sort of this hyper positive validation. So kind of, you know, complimenting the right sort of thing that you would want your kid to feel good about. So, you know, I come from a family where, it's very appearance based. My mom was, Miss Korea, and my dad is sort of old school, like, just commenting on women constantly, and so, like, I have to shield my kids from them, or especially my dad, and, he intends well, but just the stuff that come out of his mouth sometimes I'm like so, complimenting too much, I think, on physical appearance is one thing that I'm working
Mhm.
on to 'cause yeah, obviously, I'm biased, but I think my daughters are the most beautiful thing, so I'll constantly wanna be like, "Oh, you're so beautiful," but, instead focusing on the thing that you really want them to focus on, like,
Mhm.
I see how creative you are, you're so kind, or in those moments when you're brave, um, and I think putting compliments to the things again that you want them to really feel,
Mhm.
is a good way to think about it.
Yeah, that's a great point because and again, you're the expert here, but just from what I've read and studied, when you give too many compliments, especially based on physical appearance, then it almost primes the daughter so that when she grows up, she needs external compliments to feel validated, right? She doesn't feel it from within because she's received all of these compliments from others,
Mm,
um, which can affect her confidence, obviously. And if you're always chasing for somebody else to compliment you, then it's not as healthy per se as if you can just feel that internally. There's also a way to be that inner narrative in a positive way, like you mentioned, but more so on um, a level of resilience and never giving up. Like, there's all these kinds of quotes that I have in my head from my dad about perseverance, never giving up, like those kinds of things that you can compliment. I mean, maybe it's not so much a compliment, but you can be part of that inner narrative
Mhm.
that that will affect her. I mean, I see exactly what you're saying. My dad always told me, you could do anything, and maybe, I know some people say don't say that, but
Mhm,
I
mhm,
really think I have taken that to heart, and I hear him say it a lot and tell me what I'm good at. Like, those kinds of things are definitely baked into my inner narrative, and so I'm really glad that you said that because it goes both ways. If you're giving a lot of critique and criticism, the daughter might learn to feel that that is her reality. And then on the flip side, if you're able to complement her skill set or help provide even fun quotes or just different ways of thinking that
mhm,
will help her through hardships and failures and all the things, like even for my dad, it was golf. Like, he would
mm,
tell me, every shot counts. Like, do
mhm.
not give up, never give up. And I can't tell you how many times I've hit like some horrible, horrible holes and then parred the rest, just because I have that narrative of never give up. Every shot counts the same. He said,
Wow.
drive for show, putt for dough, like
Mhm,
all, and it's like so true. A beautiful 250-yard drive counts the same as a 1-inch putt. So,
hmm.
um,
That's
there's just
yeah. You
there's a
have
lot.
Scotty Scheffler in you, so you have the bounce back.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So,
Mm,
yeah, that's what I was trying to say there. It's just like there's what you're saying is very real. And for the dads out there who are listening, you can be really deliberate about the kind of narrative that you help your daughter
mhm,
shape.
mhm, mhm, yeah, and again, I think I love how you're describing what your dad kinda highlighted was process things that were positive, right? Like, you
Yes.
are capable, like, you're resilient and taught you things like resilience instead of just outcomes and appearance, right?
Yes.
The end result. How did your dad get you into golf? I'm already trying to get
Okay, so this is something I actually talk a lot about. He got me into golf at a really young age, and he kind of, I think, lured my sister's and I in with some fun things like Shirley Temples or like French fries, which we never had outside of the golf course. But anytime we went to the golf course, like there was always some like fun treat, first of all. We also really loved animals, and I loved being able to see bunnies. I didn't really get to see bunnies in a normal setting. So
Mhm,
anytime we were on the golf course, he would have me count the bunnies. And so I'd always just be like looking out, waiting to see a bunny. And you'd be surprised at how entertaining that is for me as a kid. Like, I didn't need an iPad in the back seat or
yeah,
in the golf cart. Like, I was fully there, fully present. And then he also bought me a little Snoopy set. It had a driver, a putter, and an iron. And so every so often he'd be like, "Okay, it's your turn, Madeline." And then, he would set up the shot and then I would hit one. So maybe I'm hitting like one shot per hole or so. And then pretty soon I'm like working up to doing kind of like the full set. But he made it really fun. I would say, like, to summarize how he got me into golf is he made it really fun for me, and I think he probably, because he's really good at this, I think he, like, kind of put himself in the shoes of, like, a little child
mm,
and, like, thought about, "Okay, what would this be like? How can I make this fun?" Because that's something he did throughout life and honestly still does. But, he's working on, like, what he's gonna do for the grandkids right now, like, even though
mm,
they do not exist. He's, like, already thinking about how there's gonna be, like, a granddad trip and how he's gonna do this and that and teach them skills. Like, he's just always thinking, um, in the perspective of somebody else he wants to relate with.
mm,
But for your daughters, yeah, make it fun
right,
for them.
okay. I love
Make
that.
them feel included. I
Mhm,
think, there's a lot of women who feel that golf pulls their husband away from them,
mhm,
and I think that a lot of daughters could feel the same way if their dad was always gone golfing, but the
mhm,
minute that they ask if they wanna be part of it, it shatters that narrative. So if you take your daughter golfing every so often, you introduce her, you kind of teach her the rules, like, oh, see why I did this, see where
Mhm.
I'm going to try to aim over here so that I could do this. Then she feels like she's part of it. So then when you're off golfing with your friends, she gets it. It's
Mm.
not this like mysterious, oh, dad's gone for 8 hours. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, he's golfing. Oh, maybe I'll come next time.
Mm.
Uh,
Yep.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
that's great,
that's
and
what,
there's so many good lessons in golf too, like resili like, the ultimate
yes.
test of frustration tolerance,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
is being out in nature. It's such a cool thing to teach your kids.
It really is. I am so, so grateful, especially now as an adult. Like that's one of the things I thank my dad a lot for.
Mm. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, as we're wrapping up here, would love just for you to share your final piece of advice, for any of the dads out there who have daughters. What would be, the one thing you've already given
For
amazing
sure.
advice today, but
Yeah,
yeah, just the one piece of advice.
I would say kind of in line what you were saying about how your dad kind of thinks about what it was like when he was a kid. I think a couple things is one is, there was a quote by, Mr. Rogers that I love. I think Oprah was interviewing him and was saying like, "What is the one thing that you think parents, um, failed to do in raising their kids?" And he said, "Not remembering what it was like to be a child." Um, and so I think the idea being that, you know, remembering how big and scary the world is gives you the ability to have like real empathy and real understanding for our kids. And so, I think one of the problems that I find with dads, is, we oftentimes try to just solve problems so quickly. We don't have much space for if our kid is melting down or our kid is has a high level of anxiety or depression. Like we don't like that feeling, and so we try to say, "This is the answer. You shouldn't feel that way." But
Mm,
remembering what it was like to be a kid and how scary the world can, even though we're not girls, like guys go to a complete, have a different set of things that they're worrying about, but there's no ninth grade boy that doesn't feel distressed or social anxiety over in certain situations. So remembering that and that your kids' feelings are real. Because I think you've heard this concept of like it's so important to validate our kids when, like how do you communicate with this 15-year-old, you know, girl? You don't try to tell them what to do. You don't try to solve them. It's like you really have to listen. But a lot of the stuff that comes out of them might not make a lot of sense to you, or might not make logical sense. But if you are able to put yourself in the mindset of having, of like, oh, what did it really feel like? You'll be able to see through that. So like, you'll be able to see it. It's not about that. She really just feels pain, and she just needs me to sit there and listen with her and let her feel that I feel like it's going to be okay. Right, if you try to solve it, then where you're teaching your kid, you should be freaked out about that. You need to go fix that immediately, or it's not going to turn out okay. So here's the solution. So I think remembering that you're what it was like to be a kid, and the other one other thing I would say is to really know yourself, um, know what your blind spots are, like know what ways go to your own therapy for a little bit if you haven't, just to better understand yourself, because then you'll know the things that you need to break in terms of cycles from your family. So, like I talked about, my family's over focus on physical appearance. My mom was very quick to silence, like to give me stuff when I was crying, and so I had a very low frustration tolerance. And so now
mhm,
that I'm fully able to say I have low frustration tolerance, and that's okay, like, now when I see my kid losing it, I have this desire to so quickly shut the crying up. But, now I'm starting to realize, oh, this is the pattern from my family. So now I'm learning, like, she's trying to communicate something. What is she really feeling? To sit down and
mhm.
be authentic with her and be the best version of myself. But to be the best parent, it's truly to learn and be the best version of yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ken. That was
Yeah,
amazing. So
absolutely.
many great pieces of advice in this conversation. I think this is going to be a really, really popular episode for all the dads out there. So thank you for your time
Of
today.
course, of course.
And yeah, you're welcome back on anytime. I hope to see you in the South Bay soon. Thank you for tuning into Girl Dad the podcast. If you found today's conversation helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow girl dad. I read every review and truly take your words to heart. To close out, remember, your intentional moments make lasting legacies. See you next week.